Amid the continuing conflict in Eastern Europe, China has now triggered fresh concerns in the Indo-Pacific, with Beijing likening Quad to the NATO in the region. China's Vice Foreign Minister said, and I quote, "Going against the trend to pursue the Indo-Pacific strategy, provoke trouble, put together closed and exclusive small circles or groups, and get the region off course towards fragmentation and bloc-based division is as dangerous as the NATO strategy of eastward expansion in Europe," adding if allowed to go on unchecked, it would bring unimaginable consequences and ultimately push the Asia-Pacific over the edge of an abyss. End of quote. The top Chinese official was speaking at a summit in Beijing and blamed NATO's expansion for setting off the friction in Ukraine, calling for Russia's legitimate security concerns to be addressed. The former Chinese envoy to India also warned against the pursuit of what it calls absolute security. Li said the Ukrainian conflict provides a mirror to observe the situation in the Asia-Pacific, saying that the region had two options: to either build an open and inclusive community that will help cooperation flourish, or to be divided into small blocks based on what he called Cold War mentality that would lead to group confrontation. The comments come just days after Chinese Premier Xi Jinping warned his American counterpart that the Taiwan issue must be dealt with proper care to avoid a negative impact on the relations between the two nations. Quad, comprising the United States, India, Japan and Australia, met in early March, and during the virtual summit, the leaders from the four countries reiterated forceful alteration of Indo-Pacific status quo, that it was unacceptable. China has been setting up itself against the quadrilateral security dialogue, saying the group is akin to Asia's NATO. Earlier this month, Chinese Foreign Minister said during his annual press briefing, and I quote, "The US Indo-Pacific strategy talks multilateralism, but in reality creates exclusive clubs. It claims international rules, but in reality it is setting and imposing rules suiting itself. And the real goal for the Indo-Pacific strategy is to establish an Indo-Pacific version of NATO." End of quote. In November 2017, India, Japan, US and Australia gave shape to the long-pending proposals of setting up the Quad. The four nations have time and again specified that the goal of the alliance is to develop a new strategy to keep the critical sea routes in the Indo-Pacific free of any influence. The group has also in the past dismissed allegations that it was an Asian NATO. India's Foreign Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar, speaking in Munich in February this year, said Quad is a grouping of four countries who have common interests, common values, a great deal of comfort, who happen to be located at four corners of the Indo-Pacific. I would urge you not to slip into that lazy analogy of an Asian NATO. It isn't, because there are three countries who are treaty allies. We are not a treaty ally. It doesn't have a treaty, a structure, a secretariat. It's a kind of 21st century way of responding to a more diversified, dispersed world. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.